Okay, so today we have, I think, a wonderful presentation on building the IsiXhosa Intellectual Traditions Digital Archive Challenges and Solutions. And this is presented by Amandla, Ngwendu, and Jacques. So Amandla teaches in the Department of African Languages at the University of Cape Town. She's a member of the IsiXIT Digital Archive project team and a researcher in the IsiXhosa Sociological Concepts and Intellectual Traditions Research Group, which is housed in the Department of Sociology at UCT. And our other speaker is Jacques, and he teaches in the Department of Sociology at UCT. He is the curator of the IsiXIT Digital Archive, leader and principal investigator for the IsiXhosa Sociological, that's a difficult word for me today, Sociological Concepts and Intellectual Traditions Research Group, and joint principal investigator of the Values in Africa and Middle Europe Research Group. Okay, I'll stop my share now and then you can take over. I'm very much looking forward to this presentation. Jacques, you're muted.
Menno, just a quick question. I'm going to show my slides and then do I just share my, do I share screen?
Just share screen. It will give you the options of the share screen.
I don't see it coming up. Amandla, perhaps you should share the slides.
Okay.
Don't know why it's not showing immediately.
All right, let me.
Sorry, it's yeah, I don't normally use Zoom. That's part of the problem, but there we go. You see, you're just so much better than me, Amandla. Thank you.
I'm glad we tested this beforehand.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. The floor is yours, the virtual floor.
Okay. Do you want to start, Jacques? Or
you go ahead.
Okay. So sorry, I just need to show my sharing thing is also. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to. It's not allowing me to. It keeps going out of my share. I'm not sure what the issue is at the moment. Wait.
You know what? Can I send the slides to Menno, maybe?
Sorry, folks. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why today it will just. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. We tested this beforehand.
Yes.
We did.
Okay.
Okay. Let me try it again. I'm in a better position. Okay. There we go. It keeps just kicking me out. Can you guys see anything?
Menno, I've sent them to you, so you should have them now.
See anything yet? And now I can see your slides.
I sent you an email. You got them, have you?
I don't have the email yet.
Okay. My fear is it's logging out as I speak, or should I just start and we take it from there?
Yeah, let's try. I see your slides now, so.
Okay. I'm just praying that it won't. Okay. So, Jacques, are you able to run the slides, or do I need to run them?
No, I'm sending to Menno. Is he not seeing them?
Okay, no, I just want. Okay, no, it's fine. I will.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Are you happy now?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Okay, I can move. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the disruptions. Just an introduction on our presentation. This Digital Humanities Colloquium presentation introduces the IsiXhosa Intellectual Traditions, which we refer to as IsiXIT Digital Archive, which hosts digitized of early IsiXhosa newspapers and books from the 1870s to 1914. The archive responds to debates about the importance of African intellectual traditions and their indigenous language sources in generating African social sciences which are contextually relevant. The presentation will focus on the process we have followed in building this IsiXIT Digital Archive from scratch, and as well as some of the challenges we have faced, and show how we have solved them. Over to you, Jacques.
Thank you. So next slide. You've done the abstract. Go to the next slide. Okay. So just a short introduction, really, to try and sort of place the talk in a bit of a context before we get to the meat of the discussion, really, which is around challenges and solutions. It's one way of sort of thinking about the work that we've done over the last few years. The collection at the moment, the IsiXIT, focuses on, as Amandla said, IsiXhosa newspapers and books from the turn of the 20th century. This project really started only in 2019, so it's quite a recent project. The actual very first sort of year of functioning was in 2019, and the website only went live about 2 years ago. So it's early days. We've in our assessment, made reasonable progress. At the moment, we are focusing on the collection of materials, IsiXhosa texts from the late 1800s. And at the moment in the archive, which we will share with you later on, the IsiXidimi Samaxhosa newspaper from 1870 to 1888. And Imvo Zabantsundu from 1884 onwards, which really covers the period from 1870 to 1894. So that's what's up at the moment in the archive. From 1895 to 99, the Imvo editions will be added quite soon. We're ready to upload them. And then from 1900 to 1914, we will be doing over the next 2 years. Some of you may ask, why 1914? and it's for a number of reasons. One, because it's the end of an era, as it were, related to the publishing of Ityala Mawele by Mkai, and that's his last famous book. And so in some ways, 1914 kind of, sort of brings the end of that era. Ideally, what we want to do is we want to go on to 1944, that sort of period, which is at the end of Mkai's life. So in other words, the one option in the short term is to end in 1914. But if we're able to continue, we would like to extend it, collecting materials up until the 1944, which is really the end of a generation with the passing of Mkai. And so this particular archive, as it is at the moment, is a combination of newspapers and books, focusing on the period up until 1914. But if there are resources to continue, that's the ideal. The archive, then, what it does is it allows you to browse images and to download MS Word text files of these early IsiXhosa newspapers and books. But it also includes metadata, and that has, of course, its own challenges, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And then just to place the entire project, the archive, the IsiXIT archive, in some sort of context. So I'm a sociologist. I have no training in building archives whatsoever. And my colleague Amandla has a language background. She and I have worked together over a couple of years preceding this project. And we reached a point where we realized that our work, our interest in IsiXhosa sociological concepts, was driving us to constantly look for materials, and had great difficulty, first of all, locating initially materials, and then finding materials that were easily accessible and researchable. And so the immediate practical goal of the IsiXIT archive is to make early IsiXhosa texts authored by African intellectuals in the late 1800s and early 1900s available and research ready for contemporary study. However, the added value of this archive for our team and others lies in its contribution to emerging African social sciences. And this is really where my passion lies. Inspired by the IsiXhosa writings of the African intellectual S.E.K. Mkai and the work of the social scientist, and actually the late social scientist and someone I knew well, Neville Alexander, on multilingualism and decolonizing academia, we realized that if we're going to decolonize social sciences and contribute meaningfully to the making of an African sociology, then we need to engage with these and other historical vernacular texts. This work requires grappling with socially constructed meanings of African sociological concepts as they are conveyed through these texts and in relation to historical contexts. We can't generate African sociological theory without African concepts. I mean, this is the bottom line, really, because concepts are the building blocks of theory. And so this scholarship, which relies on texts in indigenous languages, is grounded in African ontologies and what Mafeje calls endogeneity. Thus far, our research team alone has produced 3 published papers and 5 dissertations that draw on the IsiXIT archive. So that's kind of just to give you, trying to locate the archive in work that Amandla and I have been doing over a slightly longer period. And others have joined us subsequently, and I'll talk about the other team members in a moment. So what we want to do in this presentation really is talk about the challenges we've faced in some sort of chronological order. It's not a perfect order, but it gives you a sense of the process of how we've been building this archive from scratch. It's been hugely challenging, driven by need. I wouldn't have gone this route necessarily on my own, but my interest in the bigger project, which is around an African sociology, to look for materials. And when they were not available in one place and scattered all over the show and not available digitally in a digital format, and not an easily, user-friendly, research-ready format, we realized that there was a huge gap. And my linguistic abilities don't extend, beyond the 3 languages in the Western Cape. So IsiXhosa, Afrikaans, and English. And ideally, what we want to do, in conversation with other people, is really follow similar, projects in other languages, not actually only South Africa. Ideally, we want to talk also about Southern Africa. But these are projects down the line, hopefully in partnerships with other people. So at the moment, we're focusing on IsiXhosa intellectual traditions and texts. And partly because we're located at the University of Cape Town, in the Western Cape, and and IsiXhosa is one of the major languages. The university is also, uses multiple languages, but focuses on IsiXhosa and English, and to a lesser extent Afrikaans. And so those are initially, at least, the sort of the driving factors around why we're focusing on an IsiXhosa Intellectual Traditions archive. So let me talk a little bit about the challenges. If you can go to the next slide. So just for easy, so there are 12 challenges, but it gives you kind of a little bit of a sense of how this is unfolded. And so I've imagined it like this, and I will talk about some of these challenges, and then Amandla will come in and talk about some of the other challenges that tied more closely to the division of labor, as it were, in the project. So let me start with the first challenge. So right at the beginning, it was deciding how to respond to the demand for IsiXhosa text. This was a personal need, and it actually, some of you may ask, well, how did I get involved personally in this? And so I'm fluent in IsiXhosa. I think Amandla can judge that rather than me. I think I have enough. I'm reasonably good. Let me put it that way. Let me not overstate the case. I've worked working with on various projects over years in the sociological space. Worked with the IsiXhosa language in research, but it was always almost once removed. It was used in my research in the field. I would then come back and write up in English, do translations, and I would work with teams, and that's what we would do. It's a common practice. But the real issue is, as one becomes more interested in the IsiXhosa texts themselves and sociological concepts that are tied to those texts, then the conversation changes, and our research needs changed. And as is the nature often with research, it's necessity drives the process, and so that's what drove us into the space. We are completely poorly qualified to do any of this work when it comes to digital archives, but we have learnt on the trot. We have pulled in people, and I'll talk about some of those people later on, who've been incredibly resourceful and far more technically competent than I am. But we learn reasonably fast, and that's been part of the journey. So the decision to establish the IsiXhosa XIT is really a direct response to the research team and I needing to locate and access early IsiXhosa texts for a research project that I've talked about. So the texts were scattered, and newspapers such as IsiXidimi and Imvo were only available in library archives in hard copy or as an expensive and limited overseas online subscription service with poor quality scanned images. This is an very interesting, some of you may be familiar with Redex, and I think it's called, I forget what it's called now. I think is that the term? I think it is. It's an online service, curious that they have acquired these scanned images and they now sell them back to people like myself. And that was just not an option for us. We were not happy with that arrangement, and the quality is poor. So that online subscription really should be quite discouraged. And we're bought into this idea of open source, and so that doesn't fit our ideological outlook. So we were by no means the only scholars interested, of course, in these IsiXhosa texts, and conversations with other people made us realize that there's a real need for them. And so we responded to this problem by launching the IsiXhosa project to provide the IsiXhosa Intellectual Traditions, project, to provide free access to these important historical materials in a single online location, and to advance research by making source materials research ready. and removing barriers to access. Now, that's a great idea. In practice, it's a lot more challenging. And so the idea of the IsiXIT as an evolving archive began in this way. And we'll refer to the archive and the site later on again. So importantly, we had an idea, we had a need, and then of course we had to find these materials. And so the next challenge is identifying and locating the IsiXhosa texts. And initially, various Google searches, various texts, books, Pires, Opland, Kuse, a whole range of other people have Pamela Maseko, a whole range of people have over time referred to collections in different ways, in different publications. And so we were able to sort of cobble together, figure out sort of where we can find things that we need. And it really boils down to a couple of libraries initially, at least for the initial set of texts we were looking for. So UCT library had some materials, particularly the books. And then we were able to find in the National Library of South Africa newspapers, newspaper archives, and the Corrie Library. And those are the ones we focused on initially. So Corrie, of course, for those of you who don't know, you probably do know, but is at Rhodes University. And then the National Library, there's a branch here in Cape Town, which is very well resourced. But and I believe there are other branches elsewhere, including Pretoria, if I'm not mistaken. So we focused working primarily with the National Library here in Cape Town, and then the Corrie Library in Makanda, Grahamstown. And so we were able to know where these collections are, and then go and access them. And so the next challenge was then actually going and finding these materials and scanning copies of them. Obtaining the books from UCT's African Studies Library before it was burnt down was easy. But the very fire that took place, at UCT and burnt down the African Studies Library was a huge wake-up call for the need for these very kind of digital archives. And we know that the digitization process of the African libraries at UCT was in progress, but many materials were lost. And so digitization is critically important. Not only for storage, but also, of course, then making it available to researchers. And so, research assistant. In the case of the books, we were able to I got a research assistant to scan each page using UCT's flatbed scanner. The library was incredibly helpful, and we were able to get high resolution images for then obviously suitable for OCR image to text conversion. And so accessing early IsiXhosa books was fairly easy. The same cannot be said for the IsiXhosa newspapers. They're far more challenging. The quality of the hard copy newspapers varies hugely. Some newspapers, collections, for the most part, the IsiXidimi, with the exception of 1 year, I think that's 1886, if I'm not mistaken. Might have to check that. But there was 1 year missing in the IsiXidimi collection. And we're going to have to try and track it down elsewhere. But the IsiXidimi materials we got mainly from Corrie Library and from the National Library. And then IMVOR similarly, we were able to get collections up until the end of the 1800s from the South African, the National Library of South Africa. So negotiating access was in itself interesting. So they have special collections in these libraries, especially the National Library of South Africa, and it's all, you can't, I, for example, cannot go and scan the materials myself. So we had to actually access the materials through the library staff under very strict conditions, and we ended up having to purchase scanned copies of newspapers. And that then was sold to us by the library. So we largely were paying partly for labor and partly for the use of their scanner, and then getting various permissions to use the materials. So although copyright doesn't apply to these books and newspapers, one still needs the basic permissions to use these materials and to put them online. So that was the sort of way we responded to that initial challenge. And then the obvious one, sort of sequentially, the next challenge was funding. And we were fortunate up until now to get funding from Mellon. But of course, with Mellon leaving South Africa, that funding now comes to an end. And so inevitably, as is always the case, one is on the search for more funds. That's always an ongoing challenge in research. And then the challenge number 5 really is identifying and purchasing suitable OCR software. So now we had these images scanned, high resolution, and we were able to get from Corrie Library and from the National Library and UCT. So we had these materials in an image format to files, and then we had to figure out what software would be most suited. And so I shopped around for OCR software and finally settled on purchasing Abby Fine Reader. And ABBYY Fine Reader is user-friendly and does the image to text conversions reasonably well. For those of you who are looking for this kind of software, we would argue that this is probably among the best that's used internationally. It's not cheap, but it's also not that expensive. The only problem with Fine Reader is that it allows you only to download each purchased software package onto a single machine. So it's not transferable. And so we've had a couple of challenges around when machines are upgraded, losing the software, or having to change machines because of some other problem, and then having to purchase more software. So those are, I guess, just the kind of nature of the problems when you purchase software that has those kinds of restrictions. So we had the images, we were able to convert them, and of course now we needed staff. And so challenge number 6 is recruiting and training a research team to work on the IsiXIT. So in addition to Amandla and myself, the IsiXIT archive project includes Jonathan Schurtz from Stellenbosch University. In fact, I was his PhD supervisor, and he's gone on to greener pastures, as it were. But he and I continue to work together on other projects. And what is really, he's resourceful because he has a background in computer science and came to sociology at a postgrad level, and has an honors in languages. So he's got the wonderful combination of sort of linguistic skills, computer science skills, and a master's and PhD in sociology. And then we have a group of research assistants, and I always like to mention them by name. So Zimi Sigenu, Sipenkosi Shangu, Sipile Kayama, Pilisa Plamana, Sino Onga, and Likona Kazisa. And then we also have a really great support from UCT's Digital Library Services. So this is the team. And Amandla and I have trained the student research assistants to use the OCR software and to clean converted text page by page. It's a very laborious process. All the research assistants have a IsiXhosa first language in their schooling education, and they're all from the Department of Sociology originally, and they've journeyed with us. What's wonderful is that, with the exception of one, all of them are now postgrad students, having started as undergraduate students. And so it's been a wonderful journey working with them. And they have assisted us in various ways, primarily around metadata, which we'll talk about later, and converting to text and cleaning the data, at least. I'm nearly finished, Amandla. So Amandla will discuss this later on a little bit more when she elaborates on it. So automating some of the common image to text conversion errors, is a new area we want to explore. And so a lot of it was done by hand. The question is, how do we automate some of these things down the line? And so there are conversations around how to do that. So when you convert using Abby Fine Reader image to text, then you've got to clean. And so there are always, problems with that, cleaning text, making sure that any errors, the original text might have a hole in it. It might be faded. And so you have to then make decisions about how to correct that. And, but there are also some very common formatting issues that we come across. And so the question is it possible, and how do we automate some of that? But all of it at the moment is primarily done with, individual people correcting manually, effectively. And then Jonathan has also trained two of our research assistants to generate metadata, which is linked to books and the newspapers, and will be discussed later on. Amandla now will talk about storage of the image files, and that's the next challenge. And then the one thereafter is cleaning converted text files and quality control.
Thank you very much, Jacques. So I will be going on to storing the images and text files. So I think this was our biggest challenge that we had. One of our biggest challenges that we have is that we originally had space with Google Drive, which was reasonable. It worked perfectly for us, and we could just store stuff in Google Drive before it had to be uploaded. Remember, Jacques told us about the process where we first have to convert, etc., but then we have to store all of these things in the Google Drive before Sanyan can put it up onto onto the website. So storing was reasonable on Google Drive, and it worked for us up until we had more work that we put up. Then the storage started to be a bit minimal. I guess also we saw that maybe the agreement between UCT and Google was limited because maybe of funds and stuff. So it then became a task of that we don't have enough space in the Google Drive, and our Google Drive would always find to be full. So now we use a UCT drive called SharePoint, which is working for us, and as I said, the space is also it's reasonable there. And we also needed a space that would be easily accessible for everyone within the team. So because now we are on SharePoint, everyone has access to the SharePoint, and we haven't yet have limited space or have no space at all. So we need something with generous space, if that makes any sense. So that hurdle we crossed because now we have the UCT drive called SharePoint, which we are happy about, and it's working for us at the moment. And then our next challenge is the cleaning and the converting of the text files. So first, with the cleaning and the converting of the text files, we need to train these students on how to do the work. So the work is done. The work is done in that, as Jacques has said to you, we first go to the library, get everything scanned, and it's sent to us as a PDF format, right? As it is a PDF format, I then use ABBY or ABB Fine Reader, right? Which is an OCR software. And for those of you that don't know, because I originally was not sure what an I was also not sure what an OCR is. It's an OCR, which means it helps us in that it only detects what is there. So it doesn't give us any language restrictions, which is great because you will find most of the time when something is converted into IsiXhosa, for example, you get all the red lines or all these markings showing you that they are incorrect. But with ABBY, we have none of those issues. It converts as it sees it. But I'll also tell you some of the problems that we face with that a bit later. So the process of converting is we first we get the scanned copies, which are PDF, scan it onto the ABBY Fine Reader. When it's scanned onto the ABBY Fine Reader, that converts it into a text. Now it converts it directly into text in what it sees. Our problem is mostly sometimes ABBY will read an E as an O. Sometimes, as Jacques has mentioned before, the quality. So the older the text, we see that the quality was a bit bad because sometimes pages are ripped. Sometimes it's a bit darker. Sometimes it's very hard to see. However, most of the time we found that it's on the side where the pages are, they are damaged. So sometimes you find it's just one letter that is missing, etc. And because of the talent and because the students that we're using are IsiXhosa first language speakers, most of the times they are able to see what is missing in that one word that is missing. So it's not a lot of the time that we find that we have paragraphs missing or a whole sentence missing. Most of the time it's either a word or it's just a letter that is missing, which our students are able to help out with that and when they do the conversion, there's round one conversion. So after I have done it into a Word document, there's something we call round one cleaning. When they do the round one cleaning, that is where they have to ensure that what is on the Word document is exactly replicating what is on the PDF. So with the fine tooth comb, they will go through the work and make sure that everything is as it should be from the PDF to the Word document. Then after that, we have what we call Clean Pass 2 cleaning, which is another form of looking through the work. So this person will look through the work that the round one cleaner has done. And the round one cleaner, when they have found a mistake in a word, etc., they will highlight the word or they make it bold. If they see that there's a missing word, a full word missing, we put dots on it to show that this word is either not showing or it's missing, so that whoever's auditing it can also be aware of the situation. So round two, whoever's doing Clean Pass 2 will look through that and see that they're happy with whatever changes have been done. They also need to make sure that how the page is looking is exactly how the page should look on the Word document. So the titles and everything on the side, and making sure that we have all the columns and everything like that. Once they have done these changes, so it's gone through round one cleaning, then it goes through Clean Pass 2 cleaning. I then do what I call auditing. In my auditing, I only do 20% of the audit. So I'll take 20% of the work and I check through each, I will check 20% of the work that they have done. However, sometimes you find that in the 20%, there's a lot of mistakes, and the mistakes are maybe common, or something has a red flag for me. Then I will go and I pull more of the work so that I can see if it's a continuous problem. Then I need to call the students and we need to check what the issue is. At sometimes the students have problems where they don't know what to do and things are not working. Like sometimes you find that the columns, they're overriding each other, etc. With things like that, we have a document that we call the problem tracker page. So our problem tracker page is where the students, if they've had an issue, they will on the side in the problem tracker say that page so-and-so is done. However, this is the issue. When we find same problems over and over again, we have a page where we also write solutions to our problems, because I will then call in if the issue is something that I feel like I can't work on, I will call in Jacques and Jonathan, and sometimes we can sit together and try and solve some of the issues. I don't think there's a time that we've gone through an issue that was too big for all of us. At times I can't solve the issue, then Jonathan will come in and be able to solve the issue. So at times we are able to call on each other. However, what is vital is that we write down the issues so that in the future, if there is such a problem, the students can pull up that page and read how to solve the issues that we're having. And as I've said, most issues that we've had is because of the older issues of the newspapers. You find that they are torn on the side, they have holes, and there's nothing you can really do with some of them, because that is how we found them at the library. Now, also another issue that we find is that basically our work is determined by the students, and as you can imagine, students are very busy, so we need to work around their timetables and their busy time. So you find that during exam time, dissertation hand-ins, etc., those are very busy times for them. When it's test week and all of that, those are very busy times, and therefore we find that work, slows down a lot during those times. However, we do then, during the holidays and during their semester breaks, we do then, get the beat up again, to get them working hard enough so that we are up to date with what the work is. You do sometimes find that there's, like, sometimes you have a deadline and they're very busy, but because of the kind of work and how we've trained them, is that I am able to do the work they're doing and they're able to do each other's work, like they're able to do, but we don't often find times where we have to change students to do other students' work because the other students are busy. I mean, they work very well, and when they do work, it's amazing the kind of work that they do. And I find that the auditing process becomes so much simpler because it's not often where I'm finding a lot of mistakes. So that, for me, I think those the cleaning and the converting of the files and the quality control, it's something that we've had the challenges, but we are able, and we have been able to go get over the challenges. Jacques, you can continue.
Thanks, Menon. I see we've got about 10 minutes left, 9 minutes. I'm going to only be a few more minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. Just want to talk then about so a lot of the labor from our side is related to what Amandla has just shared with you, and it's quite laborious at times, I guess. But the more interesting work from a technical point of view, of course, is the next challenge, which is around deciding on a web host software platform to host the IsiXIT Digital Archive. And that's where UCT Digital Library Services has come in, and they've really done enormous amount of work on that front, and we've relied heavily on them. So UCT's Digital Library Services is pioneering the development of web publishing platform for galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, called GLAMS, of course, with excellent support and preservation services. And so because they have this already, this project that's been running for a number of years, we tapped into that, and we are now partnered with them. And so they use what is the Ibali UCT Digital Collections is their web platform, supported by Omeka S. Some of you may know the software, and the S stands for semantic. And Omeka is also promoted by the African Digital Humanities Project. So Omeka S is a web publishing platform for GLAMS and is designed to link objects in collections and to describe these objects by connecting them to open data resources on the internet. And UCT has done pioneering work, and we've been in conversation also with the African Digital Humanities Project and the team based at WISA at Wits University. And so Omeka S really is the software that's being used, and relies heavily on sort of metadata, and allows creators of websites to create a great deal of flexibility to set up metadata templates to consistently describe their items. Is an important feature for us. And so we, at the moment, are focusing on item level metadata in the Omeka space. And these templates are constructed out of internationally recognized metadata standards, but it allows for very much a sort of customized approach. And that's one of the big features, I think, of Omeka S, is that it is very easily customizable. And so that has driven the process of our public platform, that software. And so IsiXIT is housed on the UCT Ibali, in the Ibali space, and on the Omeka S platform. The next challenge is really deciding on the web design and the site functionality, and that's been very much a process of trial and error. A lot of conversation with digital library services, and at the moment the big challenge there is around our search functions. They're at the moment not great. They're not bad, but they're not great. And it's sort of article level search tab which we use. And we've been using the Omeka S features and combining them with work done to catalog, label, and extract information of the newspaper articles linked to the metadata. And we're gradually improving the sort of search functions. So that's a work in progress. And then the challenge number 11, repository and long-term preservation. I'm not going to say much about this, but really just we use UCT's digital repository ZibaHub, which is hosted on Figshare repository system. And the primary concern there is long-term preservation. And so, you know, after I'm dead and buried, this will all be available to future generations. And so it's about setting up these sort of permanently available systems, including DOIs for referencing the materials. And it's something that's in the long term preserved and permanently accessible. So that's a very important feature of the work. And it's driven also by the digital libraries staff at UC. And then lastly, just some new innovations. Challenge 12. We're constantly trying to, you know, improve things. And so we started exploring a partnership with the computer scientists at Stellenbosch University, which will use machine learning techniques to build a program to automate the identification of item level metadata. And so that's a project that we're launching, and we're in the process of discussions around how to proceed with that. And this brings us to the end of our talk, with a couple of minutes left for questions and discussion. Thank you, Menon and colleagues. Menno, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacques and Amandla, for the presentation. I find it interesting listening to this. On the one hand, it sounds so simple, right? You just get some text, you make them available. But then when you really start doing this, you realize the issues that you run into. I do see there are a few comments and questions in the chat. So Benson mentions, have you tried reaching out to the CHPC for storage and cloud services? So that's the high performance computing group. So that might be something else if you're struggling with cloud storage. They actually provide that as well.
That's also useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's always Google Drive was great when it worked, and then we got told that we no longer now have access to the same amount of space. And so the space police stepped in, and we had to migrate.
yeah, no, I completely understand. I was also wondering a little bit about whether you do backups. So cloud storage is nice, but what happens if something like this happens, right? So all of a sudden you cannot access the files, and when the same issues arise with SharePoint in a way, perhaps not now, but who knows in the near future.
Yeah, we have multiple spaces where we store. Yeah.
Okay. So Stembele has a few interesting questions. When cleaning the text, do you also rewrite the text to match the new orthography? I'm asking for people who are doing research and might not understand the old orthography. Are they also translated? Or is the project just about preserving the texts?
I think it's more preserving the text, because we're trying to keep it as original as possible. Because a lot of people, we found even now, I was actually shocked, because in the beginning, I thought when Jacques came up with this idea, I was like, oh, there he goes again. But we have so many emails of people saying, when is the next coming? Because people are researching the actual newspaper. So we're keeping it as original as possible. So we don't change a thing. It's just them trying to get it exactly to the same. So we don't change anything.
Similarly, you want to follow up on this?
Sorry,
you can open your mic if you want, Stembele.
Oh, someone else. Okay.
Oh yes, Thembele.
Greetings, colleagues. The name is Thembele Johnson. I work at Stellenbosch University. I'm the IsiXhosa facilitator. I'm a fan of the work that you're doing. I love it very much, because in the old text, one thing I love is that when you actually move it to the new orthography, for example, you actually take some words there that now we have borrowed words, for example.
Yes.
We use only borrowed words. So the reason I'm asking is because I've translated the text for people who are doing research and who want to understand. So now we have to put it in the new orthography. So I'm not saying that we should not keep it as is. The work is beautiful as it is, but also now we have to think about people who are doing research, and who also, there are people who are not first language speakers who want to understand IsiXhosa, but the old orthography is difficult even for me. So you have to sit down and research also from the eldest people to understand certain words. So hence I'm asking, do you actually have a soft copy that is available for people like with this new orthography, so that they can understand the text also when they're doing research?
Thank you, Thembele. Just to quickly answer you, we don't have a soft copy of new orthography. I think that would be another project on its own. I mean, with the project that we're doing now already, like it's full on and it's running. I think that's a lovely idea, and it's a new project that maybe someone, or even us again, can go into looking into doing, but it's we don't have that accessible on our end. No.
If you guys need me for that, I'm available. Just putting it
Great
out there.
Are you self-funded?
You guys have to look for funding for me, please.
I think the project is growing by the minute. Ngozi, you also have your hand up?
Good morning, everyone. This is Ngozi. I'm a translator by profession. Really, I think I'm happy or excited with this thing. I've been following the project in UKZN where they help with the issue and bringing new terminology, and it's really exciting. But now, what's frustrating to me, it's only one university that you speak highly of. We have universities in the Western Cape, we have universities in the Eastern Cape. You only spoke about UCT. How easily and accessible is it for a public person, not just a student? Because I know when you visit these universities, there's so many loops to jump. You have to bring an ID. So I know it gets frustrating, especially when you're not coming from a known company. You have to jump these loops and whatnot. How easy is it for a normal person, so to say, to get access to these things? And how helpful were the other universities? Is there any finance from the department that you are getting? Because this work really needs to be done. And I applaud you for this good work. Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you, Ngozi. Can I answer the first part of how easily accessible? And then you can continue, Jacques. Is that fine?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ngozi, a lot of people outside even UCT are able to access it's very easy. We would have shown, if we had time, how to access it. It's very easy. Once you go in, you will see it. It's right in front of you. So it's easy accessible. Do you want to continue, Jacques?
Yeah. I mean, this is a fair question. At the beginning of the talk, I didn't say much about it, but I did mention that we buy into the idea of open access. And so, Mhlegazi, anyone from anywhere is able to go to our site and access. If you just type in Google, IsiXhosa Intellectual Traditions Digital Archive, it'll pop up, and you have access to all the texts. You don't have access to the images. You can see the images, but they're not downloadable, and that's part of one of the agreements with the libraries, is that they don't want us to make those images downloadable, but you can see the image, but you can download the text. So the user-friendly text, which is researchable, is available, and that is downloadable free of charge. And it's very easily done. So that answers that question. It's a very important principle that we've kept to, and I think that it's from an academic point of view, making materials accessible and easily accessible and freely accessible is something we should always champion. Then the question of funding. Funding is tight at the moment. We've explored various funding avenues, and the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, I think is one place that has provided historically funding, but their budgets have been cut. So this is a constant problem, we're soldiering on. But funding ebbs and flows, and then partnerships with other universities. Through the African Digital Humanities, we have had various workshops and partnerships with other universities. We have an individual in Cape Town at another university also recently contacted us and wants to work with us. The biggest challenge for anyone working in this space having the resources, finding the materials, and bringing it all together. And the reason why we're doing it is because no one else has done it so far. But we are very keen to partner with, not only in the IsiXhosa, intellectual traditions space, but across other languages as well.
Thanks for the information, but I think I was not clear, but I see Andy has given us the link to the UCT part. I was referring to the UCT library. How easy is it to get? No, but I see someone has posted it. I'm going to post it.
All right.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any more questions? I mean, I've got a list of questions, but I think we also need to talk on some technical things, so we can talk about that separately as well. Benson also has another question. Are there similar collections in other South African languages, such as isiZulu? Not sure if you know of any.
So the short answer is that I'm aware of some work being done in other universities, but I haven't gone out and actually actively searched, so I can't answer that question with any sort of knowledgeable response.
This one.
Perhaps the work that is being done by Mazisi Kunene currently, because they currently digitizing the author Mazisi Kunene, who's also a prominent isiZulu author. I'm not sure the period when his text was written, but I think it's also from the 90s. So I know that for isiZulu, they're currently digitizing his artifacts and his written work. So maybe who was Benson can check out the Mazisi Kunene Digital Archive. I'll try find the link somewhere, I'm not sure. And I'm sure UKZN has something as well.
Thank you, Andiswa. Nkosi also mentioned UKZN has something similar, but mainly they develop new terminology. I think there are multiple projects in the country, but I'm not sure if there are a lot like you that actually already have a website where you can search. And so I think you've gone through a lot of the practical challenges like you presented here. I'm not sure if there are any more questions. I just have a short question, which might be useful. Also what we just discussed, and because we're also kind of running out of time a little bit. Do you have any recommendations if other people want to start something like this? We were talking about the other languages, things they really should do, things they really should not do.
Amandla, do you want to start, or do you want, it's up to you?
I think the most important is just to find a team that can work together as one, because I find that if we're not working together, then it's a huge challenge and nothing gets done. So if you can firstly find your team that that will work, and each other's strengths be known, so that you're not depending solely on Jacques for something, and then Jacques is busy in his department doing his other things. Make sure that everyone can assist one another in the other way. I think that's the most important thing, and obviously getting funding, but I mean that's a story for another day. Do you want to go, Jacques?
No, I mean it's a good question, and there are some things we've learned. One of the key things for me up front was putting together the cross section of expertise, and so I think we've got to we've got a nice mix of skills that allows us to do most of the work, and so I think and also knowing one's limitations is important, and so I think for me that's critically a very important ingredient in making sure that that this whole process works. I think it's early days for people working with Omeka S, for example. Being connected to networks does help, but the truth of the matter is you do need to go through trial and error, and you need to work with people that are experienced. but you also want to customize. And so having our partnership with Digital Libraries UCT is critically important. And so I think for me, that's that, there are all sorts of other challenges along the way, but for me, those are the big ones. Remaining motivated when sometimes you feel the odds are against you is you need to have people committed to this, because it's sometimes quite slow and frustrating. Had we been able to consult people, so there at UCT there are a couple of other archives, and so we've been able to talk to other people who've built archives. But because we're using a particular kind of platform that we've driven through Omeka S software, that type of, you can have generic kind of input from other people, but it's at the moment, a lot of the conversations are around how do we use our Omeka S platform. And there isn't that much expertise. A lot of the people working in this space at the moment are newbies, in the sense that they've only been working on it for a couple of years. But that is critically important, is having that support.
Okay, thank you very much. I think people are also leaving for other meetings. The day does go on, but thank you so much for this presentation. I think it was very insightful, and let's hope that you can continue working on this, but also that it serves as an example for other projects that do something similar. Thank you so much. I'll stop the recording now.